I'm Jess Moschino. I'm the VP of Account Management at Workable. I've been with Workable for almost 2 years now, and prior to that, about 20 years in different CS roles. So I'm excited to be part of the conversation today. David and Natalia, I'll let you introduce yourselves. And David, if you want to go first.
Go ahead, Natalia.
Go ahead,
okay,
David.
I'll go first. Okay, awesome. My name is David Vensis. I'm coming to you remotely from Boston, Massachusetts. I oversee talent acquisition as the talent acquisition manager for Drizzly, which is a company that works in the United States. It helps folks get access to alcohol delivery through an app and a website that we power. Really excited to be here. I want to thank Workable for inviting me.
Thank you. And Natalia?
I'm Natalia Panowicz, CEO at Codility. I've been with the company for 8 years, so it's a long time. I had the privilege to join our founder Greg when we were super small. Greg solved his problem. So Greg was this engineer that ended up spending all his time not coding but interviewing engineering candidates for a company that was growing very fast, and he figured out there's a better way to scale engineering teams, and this is what Codility helps our customers globally do. So we're an evidence-based platform. We help to predict real-life skills of engineering candidates so that our customers can pretty much scale their engineering function faster, remotely, and with less frustration of everybody. So that's us. Very excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Excellent. Great to work with you again, Natalia. So with that, let's go ahead and walk through the agenda, give a sense of what we're going to talk about today. So first on everyone's mind is what will the new normal look like? How is hiring changing as a result of this new normal? And then how is also, importantly to the conversation, how is onboarding changing, right? So typically we've been face-to-face, different exposure to our newly hired candidates. What does it look like to onboard? And then also important, so how do we maintain a connected remote culture, right? So in addition to that, just want to mention that in terms of Q&A, feel free to enter your questions in the question box throughout the discussion. We'll capture all of those, and at the end, we'll get through as many of those as we can before we close the webinar. So awesome. So let's go ahead, let's get started. So the first thing we like to kick off with is just a quick poll, right? So interested to understand for all of our participants, all the folks listening in, your opinion on what will be the most significant long-term challenge you're facing or potentially facing in a remote work environment. If you could take just a minute and just select select one of the answers below, which would be adapting my hiring strategy to the new normal, developing a long-term onboarding strategy, maintaining employee engagement and morale, or potentially there's something else. So you can feel free to enter your answer if it is something else into the question box. David, do you have any initial thoughts on this in terms of what you think would be the most significant?
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and my mind immediately goes to the third option, maintaining employee engagement and morale. I feel pretty strongly about that one.
Okay. Okay, and Natalia, how about for yourself?
I'm with David. So this is actually, I think that the first two problems, and I'm there you go. So I'm with David and the audience. So we have clarity about that. I think this is really the top of mind for me as CEO. It's something that we have to figure out in general as industry. And the first two are I think are very important adaptations, but they're more on a tactical level. Whereas the third question I think can really define what type of companies we become.
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, excited for this topic today. We'll have an opportunity to talk through each of those items, but then to delve further into again maintaining that connectivity and making sure that we have that. That we're maintaining that culture with our employees. All right, so let's go ahead, let's jump right in, right? So let's start off by taking a step back and talking about what the new normal means to each of us. So in reference to what the future of work will look like in the second half of 2020 and beyond, I know the term the new normal is out there. A lot of folks are using it. It's a bit of a buzzword. In your opinion, how does the world of working and hiring, how has it already changed? And what do you expect from the new normal? Natalia, any thoughts on this?
So I personally think that the future of work is here and now already. If we look close enough, I see, and this is our experience as a company, but this is also an experience of our customers and partners. So I've spent a lot of time when the pandemic hit to help everybody navigate the situation. And what we're seeing is that there are a couple of trends that were with us already that got absolutely accelerated in the current circumstances, and a couple of phenomena that I personally am also very happy to see emerge. One of them, and I'm sure we will talk a lot about them, but from my perspective, the most important shifts that we're currently seeing is shift to remote work, but I will actually call it not even remote work, but work from everywhere or anywhere. So I think we quickly discovered that it's possible to do our best work not from an office that was a traditional way to go, but we're actually able to do it from anywhere, and companies continue to function. We continue to deliver service to customers. So this is one important realization that we have. I think another one that the current situation brought, that I'm personally very passionate about, is that work becomes way more authentic and purposeful to us, and we're able right now to bring our full selves to work, right? So we were starting a webinar, and my dog wanted to go out to the balcony, so I had to go and let him. So that you guys know, I live with a dog, right? So I mean, it's kind of like, I think there's a blend of our work selves and personal selves that becomes so natural for everybody, and that means that for our employees and for our teams, and we have to embrace it. And in my category specifically, so we are supporting our customers who are hiring engineers. It's a very, very interesting situation right now, because before the pandemic hit, we were facing a huge imbalance, structural imbalance really, in the engineering job market. There were so many more engineering jobs that were open than qualified people to fill them, really. So there was a huge demand, not enough of supply, also in particular locations. So what happens right now is that this imbalance got a little bit more balanced. Some people stopped hiring whatsoever, or post hiring. A lot of companies continue to hire engineers. This is actually, I'm very happy to learn from David, from your experience. But what I'm seeing is that it's actually the last function to cut, or the last function to post hiring to, also because this is a function that is seen by everybody as bringing long-term strategic advantage in this world that's right now digitalized even faster because of the pandemic. So if before the pandemic every company was becoming a tech company, right now they were forced to do so overnight, pretty much.
Right.
So
wow. A lot of important.
That's what I saw.
Absolutely, and I think we'll hit on a few of these as we go through our discussion today, right? So again, that idea of authenticity and bringing your full self to work, and having that exposure that everybody else is in that similar boat, right? And getting a chance to, again, see people as people, right? Not just the tasks and functions that we're performing. And then also, I love the idea of work from home. And I also find it's also, the day changes, right? It's not just an 8:30 to 5 or an 8:30 to 6 any longer, right? We've got a little more flexibility. David, what are your thoughts on the idea of this new normal? What have you been experiencing and embracing?
Yeah. I mean, first I want to say, I think we're all kind of figuring it out a day at a time. None of this was expected, and there are challenges, right? But I think some really interesting points of innovation and cultural shifts are going to start happening with companies. So a couple things that I would layer on to Natalia's point. I mean, I agree with everything she was saying. My world is very much on the hiring side of things here at Drizzly, and we've been honestly very fortunate to be in a position where we're still hiring. There's been a lot of difficult change for people in the job market, and it's not lost on us, and I hope it's not lost on anybody. A couple themes for me, I think, knowing the situation right now, there's an abundance of talent in the market. People are finding themselves sadly impacted by a reduction in workforce across the country. And we're in a tech hub here in Boston. We're seeing it. Unfortunately, I think that, that's going to be at least a little bit of the short-term normal. I think some trends are showing people are getting back to work, which is so invigorating, but we're not fully back to where we were. And I wonder if people being remote during these times, having points to reflect, if they are still with their companies, do they start to think differently about their own career trajectory? And does that mean that it'll still be a lot of abundance in the talent market? I mean, we just don't know, but I'm really curious to see those trends. From a hiring standpoint, for companies that are hiring, there feels like there's a little bit less competition for candidates compared to where we were even early March. Unemployment was so low in so many cities and nationally for years in a row. And it was competitive to hire not just engineers, but everybody, no matter who you were, and especially in cities like Boston. And so it feels like the competition for candidates may stay a little bit lower than it was, just given the state of things. And then I think you're going to see an increased emphasis on self-care and mental well-being because, we're dealing with a global pandemic, and that is hard, and it's bleeding into our lives, and we are bringing our lives into our work more because we're working from home, and our dogs and our children and our spouses and everybody, it's all blending in together. And that's interesting because we're getting to know each other more and connect there. But it can be really hard now to delineate and separate work if you're still working and, your job search, which is a job in and of itself, and then the personal aspects of our lives. And so I know that we're finding ourselves encouraging people to go for a walk and like, hey, what are you doing? And like those things, and those are important, but going beyond and really checking on people with the pandemic, and we'd be remiss not to call out some of the civil unrest in the United States and globally. People can have their own difficulty and everyone's processing. So I think you're going to see more and more of that emphasis on self-care and well-being and the flexibility for people to work how it suits them, whether that's being fully remote forever or, when they are back in office, whenever that might be, or the options to choose. I think that's going to be more important. And lastly, I would say, I know for Drizzly, and I'm hoping for other companies, that you'll see another I don't know, more of an emphasis, I guess, on skills and competencies and values in hiring and removing some of that ambiguity to be really clear and objective, because we're not necessarily meeting each other for interviews anytime soon. It's all happening remotely. And, you should be hiring for someone's skills and their competencies and their values, right? We can do it. You don't have to meet somebody in person. There are companies that are fully remote and have been for years. So I think you'll see more companies refresh their focus on, skills-based hiring. But there's more, but those are the things that come to mind for me.
Awesome.
Especially the last one is music to my ears. So this is what we were trying to tell everybody for the last 10 years, that's the way to go. I'm with you on all that you said, David.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Terrific insight. I think, again, we're going to get into these topics in even more depth. So let's dive into one of the more challenging pieces of the discussion, right? So as and David, you've alluded to this. So for hiring, right, beginning to plan to hire again in the age of COVID, thinking about first and foremost candidate experience, right? So due to economic implications of COVID, folks are uncertain, right? They're uncertain about the opportunities before them. They may also be concerned about job security or the future of your business. Or maybe they've been impacted themselves. Maybe they've been laid off. has your, David, maybe you can kick us off, has your communication with candidates shifted in response to this versus what you did prior to COVID?
It has. It has. You know, uh, a key tenet for Drizzly and Drizzly Talent Acquisition, and one of our core values is care. We say it internally. It is a value. It is a mantra. You know, we say we care, and that is part of our hiring process, and always has been. But you know, this is different times, right? And so we've really been challenging ourselves to really meet the moment of what's happening and remind ourselves about just how important empathy is with candidates,
Mhm.
because if they're finding themselves unfortunately in a layoff situation, maybe they've dealt with the COVID situation personally, if they're still working at a company, there might be uncertainty. I mean, we are, you know, really connected by this all in a human way, and I think empathy is a really core tenet for any talent acquisition function and really any company in their internal operations. But we have emphasized that, and you know, we try to make sure that candidates understand, because we are hiring and we know that there's so much great talent in the market. We set expectations a little bit differently at the application stage. So our message that goes out is like, you know, if we're slower to get back to you, that is not in keeping with how we intend to, you know, really embody one of our core company values of just care and responsiveness. And then when we're engaging with candidates on, you know, recruiting screens or interviews, you know, we talk about just as a team, like, let's just be human with other humans. Let's slow down. You know, we have 30 minutes on a phone call to see if someone maybe is a fit enough for us to move forward in the interview process, but ask how somebody is doing, and be curious, and mean it. Not like, hey, hope your day's going well, but, you know, like, how are you? I know
Yeah.
there's a lot going on right now. How are you doing with all of this? And
Mhm.
just setting that tone early and really caring and really trying to check on folks has been something. It's not a strategy. I mean, we're being human, but I think it's more so keeping ourselves accountable to slowing down and coming from that place of empathy, and also making sure that we take care of ourselves in that too. We have
Mhm.
a lot going on and we're busy and we're dealing with our own stuff. And so it's a fine line of, you know, what we're able to do to kind of fill our cups and be really present when we talk to candidates. It's hard, but it's worthwhile. And so that's how we're thinking about it, just slowing down, being a little more empathetic, you know, communicating with folks that we understand it's challenging. We're going to do our best to talk to everybody we can.
Right. Terrific. And so Natalia, for you, just taking off from that, so how do you feel organizations can be more transparent when addressing these issues and concerns with candidates?
Mm-hmm. I would, and David, I was very moved by how you approach the candidates as Drizzly at the current times. I would love to for this empathy and care to transpire to pretty much everybody. I think it's the basic thing that we can do today, because we're in it as humankind. We're not in it as employers and employees that much anymore, right? It's a challenge for a humankind that we're going through. So I think this is it's really beautiful that you recognize it and that you live it. I would add to that approach. I would add pretty much something that I believe is right, the right thing to do in any circumstances, but in the current circumstances more so than ever. As much as we can, let's share with our candidates where we are as a company, how COVID-19 affected us, what does it mean to our profitability runway if we're not a profitable company, is there job security, what we know, what we don't know. If we don't know, how are we figuring it out, or what principles will we use to figure it out? And I think that this way we actually in a respectful way give job candidates an opportunity to make their own very informed decision about which job place is the right job place for them in the current circumstances.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm sure that transparency and again the empathy, David, as you mentioned, just being as open as you can and maintaining that again, connection. I always go back to connection. I think that's super important for folks, as you mentioned, Natalia. It's not a normal environment, right? This isn't what we're used to. So to make this shift and make sure that, again, folks get a good sense of who we are and vice versa at the most human level, I'm sure goes a very long way. So David, you earlier spoke about the abundance of candidates that you're currently seeing. Has your hiring process changed as a result of that surge?
Yeah, yeah. And it's like you think of kind of like the recruiting funnel. The top of the funnel has been really challenging in terms of trying to stick to a process, be thoughtful of everybody that applies, try to show up with that empathy and meet people where they are in this moment. And we've thought about how can we do more, and this is going to speak to Natalia's world, do more skills-based, competencies-based assessment before we, might actually speak to a candidate, so we can try to ensure a fit, before we've actually had a conversation. We've obviously gone fully remote, so all of our interviewing is happening via Google Hangouts video interviews right now, which has worked for us. It's been a part of our hiring, pre-pandemic, pre-COVID. So we've translated to do all of those things happening now. It feels like, the process moves a little bit faster now. I think that's a product of pre-pandemic. A lot of the talent we wanted to hire was employed and they were considered a passive job seeker. So when it comes to some of the details and the coordination of getting somebody into the office, them to comfortably take the time from their current employment to come in and interview can add sometimes, days, if not a few weeks, to actually happen. And so I think we've been able to accelerate the interview process because of those pieces, but also, knowing there's so many great job seekers out there who are so qualified. We're engaging with people a lot faster. As soon as we post a position, we're starting to see people who are a great fit. We're not waiting a few weeks to need to kind of do sourcing efforts there. So those things, I'm seeing. And again, how do we get really clear as a company? What are the skills? What are the core competencies, as well as values that we need in this position? And so, we do competencies exercises up front. We do a lot of work before a position actually gets posted online. And in doing that, we make sure we have a thoughtful process. So then we get into it and we emphasize those things, and it takes out some of the guesswork and some of the bias that might be introduced, which goes against, our DEI efforts to diversify a candidate funnel. And part of me thinks that, doing interviews online, again, I think it has refreshed our focus on what we're hiring for, and not looking for, sort of like seeing somebody in person and reading body language and their personality. Like, those things are interesting and we care about them, but they're not necessarily how you hire somebody. You want to hire somebody for skills, competencies, values, and so forth. So those are some of the things I'm seeing. It's, a little bit faster for us to hire right now because I think coordination is a little easier, and just a renewed focus on skills, competencies, and our values.
Perfect. And Natalia, I can see your face lighting up. Do you have any comments that you'd like to add?
I think that a forced remote situation for everybody is actually a fantastic opportunity to put more discipline into the hiring process, and put more structure to the hiring process, and put more, I would say, put more predictability to the hiring process as well. And I am totally with you, David, on the fact that we have to be very clear upfront what is needed for a person that would be successful in our job, and then test exactly for that and not anything else, right? And I think we're actually, by going remote, we have seen that when our customers are very mindful of doing that in a structured way, they are actually able to get a more accurate signal than from a traditional process that had some office interaction. Some people were remote, some people were in the office, etc. I think it's a very interesting situation where we are also having a level field for candidates. To the extent that some companies decide to do a blind evaluation for quite some time in the process as well, which is very interesting. We actually support it at Codility, so we have an anonymous workflow mode where we can actually uncover who is the candidate well past the assessment is done on the core skills, core engineering skills of that candidate, so that any biases of how we think that, how we unconsciously think how an engineer looks like, right? Or what's the name of an engineer, or what's a gender or nationality or ethnicity of an engineer, we can remove that from the process. So I think it's actually a chance to ultimately build a more equitable process and a stronger process if we approach it with the right mindset and in a structured way.
Great. Thank you both. So let's touch on employer branding and benefits. So, again, many of the office-based or physically oriented perks and benefits that companies have used to attract high-quality candidates are no longer in play. So, David, how has this changed for you? How have you seen a shift in what candidates are looking for? Beyond the role.
Yeah. A lot of perks and benefits and so forth are oftentimes like they're one to many. Like snacks in the office, catered lunch, workout classes, yoga classes, trainings, and so forth. So I think one of the biggest things we thought about is like how can we be more flexible with like individualizing perks and benefits that matter for folks. So that's one piece. I mean, I can tell you a little bit more and go deeper, but we've also thought about doing a stipend, right, for people to when they're getting their work environment set up. I mean, we've hired a large handful of folks since it's being remote. It can be challenging for us to be getting equipment and monitors and laptops and so forth out. So we do ship laptops and so forth, but people need to set up a space that works for them. But we also we give a stipend, and we don't mandate what you use it on. Some people might need to use that money to pay for a babysitter to free up some of their time during the week, because that's what's going to set them up to do their best work, right? So we've thought about that, that flexibility with giving stipends for folks to set up whatever they need to do at home to work in a way that works for them. We've shifted budget obviously from perks like food and snacks and so forth. We've increased, a cell phone stipend. It used to be kind of like approval based depending on your role at the company, but we're rolling that out, and then we want to make sure that we increase it so people can pay for things like maybe different Wi-Fi access or broadband networks, what have you. We used to, do again in office sort of wellness and fitness and things, looking at sort of mental health, physical health, emotional health. So we're translating those things to be online now to still give people that opportunity to really just congregate and do something as a group. And we're working on that every few weeks. Doing drizzly orders that we allocate budget for people to get orders for getting their favorite alcohol delivered if they choose to partake. We used to do office orders. You could order your favorite drink. We would support our customers, our retailers in Boston. We would try new things. It was really good and educational and support our customers. So we're trying to keep that going. And I guess another piece I would highlight is like lifestyle benefits. We used to pay for a company that had a culmination of things where our employees would get discounts and promo rates, but it didn't necessarily make the most sense. And so now we're saying, we will allocate funds as a company and encourage people to spend, X amount on the things that matter most to them. No questions asked, right? It could be donations, could be what have you. And they just expense it, right? They just expense it and we'll reimburse. So those are some changes we've made for our perks and benefits. I will say, when I think about our candidates that we've hired in the remote world, I'm not feeling as much, I guess, just like of the questions that are coming from people and them deciding from one company to the other only on perks. And I think that could be because of the job market.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people are feeling anxious and they're feeling a sense of urgency and they want to land what's next, right? Like their world was changed and there's so much uncertainty. that's not to say benefits and perks aren't important. They are very, very important. But I don't think we felt with most of our discussions, people are really necessarily kind of like grilling one company versus the other. I think there's just a sense of like wanting to feel stability with that employment. That said, a lot of people are asking, what's the plan? When do we go back to the office? When does your company go back to the office? Is being fully remote something that you're willing to do as a company? Will I have the option? People are asking about that because that's just the way we're working right now, right? Some people want to be in the office, and I get that, and some people don't, and we get that. So we're committing to being remote optional as a company to give people the flexibility. That's probably the one thing we've heard the most. The other stuff is important. We're not hearing candidates press on it too much, but we have shifted for our employee base to adapt to the situation and be more individualized and flexible with our perks and benefits.
Nice. And I think it goes back, Natalia, to what you were saying earlier, like being more human, right? And making sure that everything's intentional, purposeful, meaningful. So that great insight. Thank you so much, David. Natalia, how about from Codility? What are you guys doing to shift, if anything, or what are you thinking about shifting towards?
So when it comes to perks and benefits, my general take is that whatever a company decides to do, it should support best possible work, and it should support best possible workplace experience as well, right? And what I realized some weeks ago is that workplace is no longer an office. So workplace is everything, and workplace is an office. Perhaps if we keep an office, workplace is how do we manage our Slack channels or what happens in Slack channels. That's also workplace. Workplace is virtual gatherings, etc. So I think the whole definition of what really constitutes a workplace suddenly got so much broader. It also workplace is also my workplace at my home, right? That has to be comfortable for me and has to support best possible work on my from my side. So that's our thinking around perks and benefits in general. Practically, what we have done since the outbreak of the pandemic. So we upped our healthcare coverage for our employees. So we did that. We didn't have that in the past in the US. This is actually different in Europe, where there is social security working and kicking in. So, but we also covered paid medical leave as part of PTO. So we did that. We have similarly to you, David. We have an allowance for equipment, no questions asked as well. Again, make your current situation comfortable. We were letting people take things from the office if they felt like to arrange their workplaces, etc. etc. And in general, we actually thought that what we saw is that in the remote situation, it's not that much. So that's maybe to the question that the audience is also mostly interested in. My big revelation is that in remote situation, not necessarily at least not in our case, not necessarily the engagement is an issue. I think right now people want to be so engaged with their workplaces also because it gives a sense of stability and it gives a sense of belonging. I think what really is an issue is how do we support our teams not to burn out in the current situation, because there's so much pressure, there's so much stress everywhere. Boundaries between work and private life are shifting. We have to learn how to adapt to that world. So I think that to your point, David, mental health and emotional well-being of employees, etc., is crucial. But we have to monitor for burnout even more than for engagement right now.
Great.
I couldn't agree more.
It's the opposite of the scale.
Terrific. So just to quickly add to this, and we'll make this quick because there are other topics I want to make sure we get to. In terms of the technologies that you're using to continue to hire remotely, can you throw out just a few examples for folks, just so they have a sense of what you're doing? And then again, we'll move into onboarding. So Natalia, if you'd like to share how you're.
So of course, for hiring, we eat our own dog food. So for hiring engineers, we hire them using various Codility solutions. So it works beautifully remotely. We shipped a virtual whiteboard for diagrams as well. So pretty much everything that you would do in an office with an engineer is done through Codility. It's a pair programming. It's first of all skills based take home assessments, then pair programming virtual environment that actually pretty much mimics the what you would do in the office and takes it a notch up. So that's for the engineers. For non-engineering roles, I think as the whole world, we embrace Zoom or Google Hangout slash Google Meet. We do have actually we're strong believers in skills-based hiring, so we do have skills assessment for all the roles, but for non-engineering roles we don't use any specific platforms. We actually design our own assessments or tasks that would mimic very much what the person would be doing on the job.
Great, thank you. And David?
All of the same, yeah. So Google Hangouts is our primary video platform for interviewing and connecting with the team for interview debriefs and so forth. We've been leveraging, obviously sending different assignments for pre-work assessments. We will just use PDFs and so forth. For some of our technical roles, we'll do a virtual whiteboarding tool and a virtual programming tool so that we can watch folks code in real time or whiteboard something out in real time.
Gotcha. Very good. Okay, so as we, again, talking about what the new normal looks like, talking about the candidate experience, how hiring practices, things we need to be thoughtful of when we're going through the process for interviewing candidates. The next stage, obviously, once we've hired, is that onboarding experience, right? And taking it, potentially fully remote. I'd love to hear from each of you the strategies that you've employed, again, to maintain, that connection and that sense of community as you're going through the onboarding process. David, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah. So we've been hiring a great deal, being an on-demand service. Again, during the pandemic, it's meant a big surge in business for us. So we have added to our hiring plan, and onboarding is like, those are the most important first moments with your new teammates. I mean, it can predict their entire trajectory with you. Those first minutes, the first hours, the first couple of weeks is like really key. So that's a challenge. We're iterating, right? We're never going to be perfect. We get better every single time. But some of the key things that I wanted to call out, and I can take no credit for this, I have an amazing coworker that manages our employee experience and handles these things. And so one of the biggest things was making sure that you have buy-in at the executive level. So my team members put together a plan, developed a stance, sat down with the executive team and made it clear this is what we're doing and we need everybody to be bought in. And why that matters is that permeates the organization. That makes its way to different hiring managers. And when there's an emphasis on hiring, whatever volume, there's a hiring manager who has a need on their team that needs to be fixed with a human being with skill and talent. And they would have that person start yesterday probably if they could. So I think there's an ongoing partnership that has to keep developing with hiring teams and talent acquisition folks and recruiters and their hiring managers. But what we did was align on a schedule, and we were very firm that throughout the year, like, this is an onboarding date, right? And we've been flexible to add some abridged versions here and there to accommodate. There are certain teams at Drizzly that are very busy right now. They can't necessarily be waiting every few weeks, and so we have found that flexibility in the process to have abridged onboarding dates. But we try our best to have people starting on a cohort start date with others, and that's a really key part of it too, making sure that people are starting at a starting line with other people starting that same day and going through this together, that is an immediate peer to you, that is a connection that you will not forget. You will go through this together. And so another reason why we try to stick firm to dates. And also when it comes to shipping equipment, that's challenging right now. And so there's back orders that can start from overseas shipment of certain technology, MacBooks and everything. So we need to make sure people have a laptop, and there's security implications there because we're an e-commerce company. So we deal with customer information and payment data. So we need to make sure they're on a Drizzly machine so we can control that environment. And then we have found that sending welcome kits is so special for someone. You know, their favorite candy, a Drizzly T-shirt, a card from the team, and other pieces. Like, that's pretty powerful. It might sound kind of cheesy and hard to measure, but I can't tell you how many new hires go to a Slack channel when they're in their first few days. They show a picture like, I got my swag. This is so thoughtful. Like, I can't thank you enough. And those moments really matter. Those are moments of joy, right? Like, that's for us a key value, like showing care and meeting the moment. And it could bring so much joy to somebody's first day to see that thoughtfulness. So another thing that we need to make sure we can be process driven about and get things shipped to people on time to like deliver on those moments and be a part of them. And then lastly, what I would say is, I think it's all about zooming out and looking at the before, so the pre-onboarding, and you need tight partnership with your hiring managers, but also talent acquisition folks, because you know we're cranking to get great people hired, and we're very process driven, and we're very metrics driven, but everything that goes into the communication ahead of time, we've revisited and really nailed down. That's like pre-onboarding. And then there's onboarding. And it's all about making sure, like, what is the must know and when must people know it? When is it going to be most impactful for them to learn sequentially? So our founding story, you know, what we do, our history, layering on then where does a new hire's role fit into that so they understand their role and their impact in the bigger picture. You know, then meeting other teams who work cross-functionally, and then talking about how we work. So, you know, talking about goal setting, performance management, our values, our competencies, the way we're communicating, that's important too. So the content is obviously really, really important, and you need to be really thoughtful with when people are learning, who they're learning it from, and what it can impact. And then after onboarding, I mean, that's arguably most important. People are going to start to go into their role more and more. So it's all about measurement, right? We do ongoing surveys, but we've also woven in doing a quiz, a handful of questions, and asking people about kind of what they learned. And we make it very clear, this is not us judging you, right? This is not an indicator of, you know, you and necessarily like, you know, how you've ramped up. That's on us.
Right.
We are using this to assess how we did, getting you to a place where you have the knowledge you need to be successful from onboarding. So there's a lot to it. I'll pause there, but those are some of the bigger things that we've enacted.
Yeah, it's again, it goes back, I think, to that theme of thoughtfulness, right? And making sure that we're doing our preparations ahead of time so that that experience is consistent, right, all the way through that process. Natalia, I don't know if you have any quick thoughts on this before we move into.
I think, David, you guys are doing a fantastic, well thought out process. So I would add one more thing that worked for us that I would recommend to do, especially in the current situation, is having an assigned buddy for everybody that joins. So then it's yet an extra connection, and then the buddy, because perhaps a manager will not have all the time, all the all days to get so in depth with the new person. So we have assigned buddies from the teams that actually help our new team members to get around, and that was tremendously successful to us as well. So it helps everybody to connect way faster and to kind of tactically help them find things out if they need to quicker.
Great. Thank you both. So just before we move into the topic of culture and also answering questions, we've got about 10 minutes left. So I wanted to take a moment and just explain about Workable and Codility, and then of course offer the opportunity for a demo if anyone's interested that's listening today. So you'll see a poll pop up. So for Workable, you'll see that, again, the opportunity to select if you'd like a demo or not. Just to give you a sense of Workable, so we're a fully equipped tool for remote hiring, from video interviews, texting, and hiring manager collaboration, etc. And then for Codility, Natalia, I'll let you give a 2-second explanation if you'd like before we move into culture.
So we're a full platform that supports all the stages of your engineering hiring and then beyond.
Excellent, perfect, very well done. So again, if you're interested, let us know via the poll, or you can respond. You can respond accordingly. All right, and moving on just quickly to catch up and to talk about, again, I know this is important to folks when we took our initial poll in regard to remote culture. So in thinking, as we've mentioned, no one knew how long this would be going on for, and we're all still working our way through it as we go. Initially, I know for us, we've been working through like a new Slack channel to keep engagement, virtual happy hours, and thinking about ways that we can maintain a scalable engagement and also make it special. So I'd be very interested to hear from each of you before we jump to questions on how you've been, again, maintaining that sense of community and that sense of culture within your organizations. Natalia, would you like to go first?
Thank you. So something that we are doing way more of right now in the current situation, also because of everything that is happening in the world, and we recognize that we are in it together, but it's a lot to handle for everybody. So we have way more. We're actually over communicating with clarity where we are as a company. I'm personally sending a weekly digest of what is happening in the management team to the whole company with full transparency. What's top of mind for us? We're having more AMA sessions. We're having more touch points with the teams, etc. So that we are doing more of. So I actually think that there's also a lot of spontaneity in our culture happening right now, where our team members will create events together, or we have a beautiful Slack channel for sharing our pets at home, right, etc. But I think it's all a combination of that, and to me a healthy culture anyhow is a culture where people have a lot of clarity, where there's safety, and where there's high accountability. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to adjust the way we work so that we can ensure exactly that in the current circumstances.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Natalia. David, how about for Drizzly?
Yeah, a lot of the above. I mean, we've increased our frequency of doing company sync ups to weekly. Using tools like Donut. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it by now. Doing kind of random pair ups with people. We integrate with Slack, and it'll kind of pair you for just a coffee chat with someone you maybe otherwise wouldn't think to connect with, right? Just to make sure you're meeting new folks. We thought about like kind of these random acts of kindness. We sent out a desk plant with a note from our CEO to folks, which was just like a nice touch. And I mean, we should be doing another webinar on burnout because it's a huge topic. But I think part of engagement is also giving people the space to kind of recharge and re-energize. So we talk about sort of managers really setting the tone with their people and basically mandating that people take a few days off in a row as soon as they could when we talked about it. And that meant managers modeling that behavior as well. I mean, it can be tough for managers. It's tough for everybody to kind of distance themselves from their work. But I think those things are really important to give people the space they need. And just, we have a flexible, unlimited time off policy. So reminding people about taking that time, I think is also a big part of engagement as well. So those are just a few things. I mean, it's ongoing, but it's all about also just like checking in on people. So we also are doing surveys very frequently to ask people what they care about, like making sure people have a voice to chime in on a forum that we can see what are the themes, what people care about, and how can we really check in. So increasing the frequency of a pulse survey on the company as well.
Great, great, all great recommendations. Absolutely terrific. So before we sign off, a couple of things. Number one, we'd love to hear what your opinions are on the future of the new normal. For those of you in the audience, we just sent a link out to a survey in the chat box where you can tell us what your thoughts are. We'll also share this out with the webinar recording via email afterwards. So in terms of some of the questions that have come in, let me go through a few of these, David and Natalia. So Emma asks, what role does AI play in recruiting efforts at Drizzly, and how will that potentially change moving forward?
That's a good question. We're not using AI much right now. We have sourcing tools, which, you know, they say they're kind of AI. You plug in skills you're looking for, and then it'll kind of recommend profiles. But right now, human beings on our team are looking at resumes, committing to look at them and respond to people in a timely fashion, and where we haven't really gone down that path quite too far quite yet.
Okay. Okay, and Kelly asks, when it comes to culture, how do you think this might evolve with more permanent remote work situations? Natalia, would you like to take a stab at that one?
Absolutely. So I think it will make it possible for our teams to be way more diverse than previously, because if we're able to work from anywhere, that means that we can hire people from anywhere, and if we can hire people from anywhere, we have access to a wider, a more diverse, more in general, I think, vibrant, potentially a community of employees. So I'm very excited about this shift, and about so many workplaces embracing the new normal in this way.
Great. So it looks like
Can I add to that too, real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Just super briefly, because I think this is really important. First of all, I know culture can be kind of hard to define, and I think sometimes a lot of things pass off as culture. So it feels like we're missing culture because we may not be in the office, we're not doing fun things, we don't have team lunches and like those perks. But I don't know if those necessarily are our culture. What I've found myself reflecting on is like, how can we be really clear on our company values, our core competencies, our ways of working, and then provide that so people have the psychological safety knowing that's the framework, and that can translate, I think, to where we are now. And then like emphasizing things like self-care and that psychological safety, and having managers be more vulnerable as well, I think can really fuel culture, sending, being in a physical space together. So it's another topic, but I just wanted to add.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And actually, Natalia, you touched on that earlier, right? I think just being upfront, consistent, clear, transparent, all incredible points. So there's one last, I thought there was one last question. It looks like there isn't. So with that, I guess we'll thank everyone for joining. Thank you so much, Natalia and David. Incredible insights today. Terrific conversation. Again, top of mind for everyone. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss this with us. Thank you, everyone, and take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.